You believe there's systemic racism?
Just like I would say that there's a lot of that black people have to deal with that makes them more soft.
Such as, like, having to be around police all the time?
Yeah, because if
Okay.
you're around police,
What?
not because police, but because we have like this, I think, law that you're gonna get arrested for committing a nonviolent drug crime. So as an extension of that, you're around police more often, you're more likely to be arrested for that.
Did he just say black people are around police more often? That was kind of racist. How come bro?
Charlie, thanks for coming. I want to ask a question about racism. I know you've argued that systemic racism in the U.S. doesn't exist. I wanted to point out some answers I think that's obviously wrong and see what you think about it. So just starting with the issue of crime, we know for a fact, because it's been studied pretty extensively, black people and people who aren't black or white people use drugs, commit nonviolent drug offenses at pretty much the same rates. Black people get arrested for these crimes about 2 to 3 times more often. It's dropping now that we've legalized weed in more and more states, which is a great thing that we've done. Even if you say that police are doing that not on purpose, but because they're just in areas where more violent crime is committed and they're patrolling, isn't that an obvious example of something that black people have to deal with in this country that's much worse off for them than non-black people?
Okay. No, but any other point you want to make about systemic racism? So let me ask you a question. You believe there's systemic racism?
Just I would say that there's a lot of that black people have to deal with that makes them worse off in the country.
Okay, such as, having to be around police all the time?
Yeah, because if you're around police,
What?
not because police, but because we have this, I think, law that you're gonna get arrested for committing a nonviolent drug crime. So as an extension of that, you're around police more often, you're more likely to be arrested for that.
Did he just say black people are around police more often? That was kind of racist. How come bro, y'all, I promise. Every time I watch a video like this, the young college liberal is literally more racist. I'm not even trying to side with one side or the other. I'm being 100% honest. Because he just said in the first minute of this video that black people are just around police more often. This is the reason of systemic racism. And for one, why do people always use crime to justify the systemic racism argument? As if all black people are just criminals or we're just so connected and intertwined with the crime underworld. What? Majority of us are not criminals. At least not what I think. I'm not a criminal. My families aren't criminals. So why, when y'all talk about systemic racism, does it always go to crime? Crime does not affect me. So that alone is kind of racist, but anyways, let's continue this.
So look, here's the thing. So in 2018, blacks made up 53% of all the homicide offenders in America. No one wants to say it out loud, but blacks commit more crimes than whites and Asians and Hispanics. In fact, there's a disproportionate amount of crime committed by blacks in America. And so therefore, you're going to have a heavier police presence. And so why is that happening? I believe there's a fatherlessness epidemic happening in America. And I really don't have a soft spot for the argument hey, there's too many police around, therefore I can't deal crack without being interrupted. Not exactly very.
And I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. I agree. Because hear me out. When you talk about crime and people are being policed more often, yes, because if you're being policed more often but you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. The only people who really have something to worry about are criminals. You want criminals running loose? You want more criminals on the streets because of their race? No, I don't. If you have nothing to worry about, you should be fine with police officers. You really should be, because you're not doing no crimes anyways. So when you use that argument that, they're being policed more, this is why they're in jail. No, if you don't have no drugs on you, nothing's going to happen to you. Why do you even have that on you? Why do you have that weapon on you? You don't need it. An unregistered weapon. That's what I'm saying. Just don't do a crime. You want more criminals on the street because they're black? I really don't get it. If you can break this down, please inform me. Please, I want to learn. But if you can't, and you agree with me,
very compelling to me. Okay? Now, secondly, let me say this, though, is that there are issues, if you want to just talk strictly racial, that are disproportionately affecting white America, such as opioids and fentanyl. Not to say that blacks are not affected by this, but it is a disproportionate rural issue. Now, why would that be? Well, white individuals, because of the industrial kind of growth in America, were more likely to get involved in muscular trades in Ohio and Pennsylvania, especially in steel mill towns and such. Therefore, they'd be more what? Likely to get injured at work. So you get likely to get injured at work because of the Sackler family, which you and I could probably agree are a bunch of criminals who should be put in prison for a long period of time. They started to overprescribe Oxycontin, into the communities, and therefore getting these people addicted to the high of an opioid and then searching for other places to go there. So we could play these kind of racial games all the time. Is it fair for someone in Southeast Ohio who's white, who was a son of a steel mill worker, and all these things, that they might have been more exposed to this sort of thing? I think the hyper-racialization of all that is less important than the real, more fundamental question, which is, why does race matter in any of this? And I say it doesn't. I don't like looking at people through a racial lens. If you want to do that, which I said, the statistics are not good at all. In fact, it shows that there's an under-policing problem in black neighborhoods across America. In fact, 50% of homicides go unsolved in Chicago, 50%, because of lack of detectives and lack of police in a lot of these areas. And kind of for your daily thought crime, police prevent crime, and they did prevent crime in New York City.
And bro, this is facts. This is really facts, because if you ever lived in a neighborhood that had a lot of crime, that was predominantly black, you would know it's really not that many police. So when you argue that black people are being policed more often, you obviously don't know what you're talking about, because you've never lived in that neighborhood. You're just going off of what you see online. Because if you really were in a neighborhood that is actually dangerous, like it has black people and it's dangerous, you would know that it's not that many police. Which is why when you look at a place like Chicago, he says 50% of murders go unsolved. Because there's not that many police in reference to how much crime is being done by black people. It's just what it is. So I don't know why someone would argue less police officers, and that mindset, that reasoning is the reason why a lot of these neighborhoods refuse to get better. Because there are people in office who think that removing the police officers, removing their weapons, removing their resources will somehow, I don't know how, make the place a better place. I really don't understand the logic. Whereas it's the opposite. It needs to be more police officers, more rules. I really don't understand the logic. And until you live in a neighborhood like that, until you experience a neighborhood like that, until you really experience what he's talking about, I don't really know what to say to you. But anyways.
New York City was one of the most dangerous, murderous cities in the 1980s and early 1990s, and someone who I think is unnecessarily mocked and smeared, Rudy Giuliani, became mayor and cleaned up that entire city. And, to his credit, liberal Democrat who ran for president, Mike Bloomberg, continued those policies. And so, look, any thoughts on that really quick, because I want to get some other questions. But
yeah, I think I wasn't disagreeing at all that police do a lot of great work. The only problem with that is that it is a true fact that a factual extension of the fact that police are in certain areas more often means that if society has shitty laws, those shitty laws are going to be enforced more often. I think most people in this room probably agree.
I don't think the law against okay, sorry to interrupt, but I don't think a law against dealing crack is a bad law.
Okay, but what about weed?
What about weed? I think
the same applies for weed. You're much more likely to get arrested, and even if this isn't happening as much now, it happened much more often in the past. You're much more likely to get arrested.
So there's been plenty of studies done by Harvard and Maryland showing there was actually an under-policing problem in a lot of these communities. You and I could do statistics all day long, because I'm sure that there's plenty that you could cite. But first of all, I'm not a fan of legalizing marijuana. I think it's a really bad idea. But I can probably agree with you that there is a problem with locking people in prison for an extended period of time for using marijuana. But there's another more fundamental question, which is this, which is you can get into sentencing, right, which is usually kind of a talking point, which is that the most important thing when it comes to your likelihood of going to jail if you commit a crime is less about your skin color and more about your wealth and how competent of a counsel you can hire, right? And so, for example, LeBron James, if Bronny gets caught dealing crack, which I don't think he will, he's going to have the best lawyer on the planet representing him that will be filing motions for dismissal, cross-examination of evidence, all sorts of different things. So it's less about race, isn't it? I mean, if Denzel Washington kids or Oprah's God kids did that, it's more about really a wealth problem, right? So then you'd say, well, it's because of racism. Well, no, it's not. blaming wealth inequality between races, which I don't like doing, but if you want to play that game strictly on racism, is a sloppy way to look at things. So the perspective
it's a very lazy way to look at things too, because it's just not accurate. People think, and this is one area where I fully disagree with, people think just because black people go through something is automatically racist. And to me, that is very dehumanizing. It's very disrespectful, because at the end of the day, we are people. We have the ability to make good decisions just as we have the ability to make bad decisions. So the young man, because this is a real question, if you believe that all these negative traits are really holding the black community to the ground and will not let us get up, what do you think about people like LeBron James or people like Oprah Winfrey or people like Barack Obama? I'm not talking about their actual actions. I'm talking about black people who've made it to a high level in society and built something. Whether you would like what they built or you dislike what they built, that's not the point of what I'm saying. The point of what I'm saying is there are black people in this world, in our country, who've made it to super high levels, who have achieved a lot. If you believe that a system is holding us back, how are these people here? Did we just skate through the shackles and climb and claw our way to the top and withhold all this racism and police? Like, no, that's not what happened. They were people. They made good decisions. Whether you would disagree, whether you like their actions or not, they are successful. So the same way that people can be successful who are black people can also commit crimes. Without anybody forcing them to do so or playing them like a puppet. We are people. So please look at us as such.
we have is a perspective of Thomas Sowell, which is you look at the whole body of work, you'll see that just because you have disparate outcomes does not mean you could solely blame discrimination. And I'll prove it to you with one data point and then we'll move on, which is this. Which is that you can have different data points that have outcomes and there's other factors that play in. So for example, San Francisco and New York are far wealthier than Missoula, Montana and Birmingham, Alabama. Why? Someone would say, racism. Well, no, it's not. Mountain towns and inland cities are just less likely to be around commerce and trade. And port cities, by definition, are always wealthier. That has nothing to do with race and everything to do with geography. So what does that example have to do? Sometimes you can have disparate outcomes with data, and attributing racism to it is actually not just imprudent, it's really, really detrimental and harmful. So one thing that I would agree with that we need to do, put fathers back into the home, which is very, very important. In 1965, marriage rates in the black community were about 80%. Now it's plummeted down to 20 to 25%. There's a lot of reasons for this, subsidizing single motherhood through the Great Society and many other things. But there's other factors that play in. How many words is a child hearing at home? Is the child getting read to on a daily or weekly basis by parents? Those things transcend race. And in fact, the hyperfixation on kind of systemic racism, I think kind of creates a smokescreen that disallows us from actually finding meaningful solution to these problems. So thank you. We got to get to the next question.
Yeah, man, that's right, man. That's right. And this topic makes me a little upset because every time I hear it, and it's not even about me agreeing or disagreeing with Charlie Kirk. One thing I like about Charlie Kirk is that he always looks at us as people because we are people. And every time he's in a debate like this, and I know the young college students may not do it on purpose, but they're very dehumanizing. They look at us as like we have no power over our lives, as if we can't control anything we do because the system is just holding us in a caste system. And it's just not true, man. Like, I promise it's not true. And it's very dehumanizing. It's very disrespectful. Yes, Charlie Kirk, he may be a little brash sometimes, but at least when he talks about minorities, he says, yeah, you could fix this if y'all did this. Whether I disagree or agree with him or not, it shows that he looks at us as if we're capable of fixing our own issues. Whereas the young liberal people don't. They look at us as if no matter what we do, we'll always be held back. And I just don't agree with that premise because I'm not a victim. But anyways, if you have any suggestions, comment down below and I'll see you on the next video.